God is so good to us, and we are so well blessed. I mean, goodness. This song, The Family of God, is by the Gaither family. You might know Bill Gaither, or you may have heard him on TV. Well, he and his wife, they are part of a small congregation, and one Sunday they had the opportunity to be at home in their home church. They travel a lot, and they came to understand that one of the members of that church had gone to work late one night, and he had been dealing with a lot of issues. His daughter was sick, and he ended up having to take her to the hospital. And then he went to work, and he was tired, and there was an explosion where he worked. And he just barely made it out with his life, and his body was burned all over. And so they took him to the hospital, and they called his family, and they said that he would not make it through the night. Now, to make matters even worse, this was actually the Saturday after Good Friday, just before Resurrection Sunday, just before Easter Sunday. But what the church did when they found out that their brother was in the hospital and that the doctor had said he wouldn't make it through the night, they opened the church, and people came all night long and prayed. And they prayed and they prayed until finally, Easter Sunday morning, they got there in the excitement of Christ's resurrection. But they were also excited because they got word that their brother had lived through the night. And so the Gaither family, he and his wife, they were riding home after Resurrection Sunday worship that Sunday. And as they were riding home, they got to talking, and they said, you know, we don't get to go to church much because, you know, they're traveling all over the country singing and all of that. And so as they continued to talk, they came to the conclusion, you know, we don't get to go much, but isn't it a blessing to have a family that'll pray for you all through the night? And they conversed, and they said, you know, they did it for him, but you know, they would do it for us. And so when they got home, the wife was cooking, and he sat down at the piano, and he began to sing and write the words to this song, The Family of God. And so it is indeed a great joy to be a part of God's family. We need each other to make it through this thing that we understand as life. In Genesis chapter 45, we find the words of our text this morning that make up our lesson, our scripture lesson, and then our sermon text for the morning. As we get to chapter 45, I want to kind of bring you up to speed because 45 is going to start kind of part of the story, but is not going to give you all of the different things that has happened in this family. This particular family, today we're going to talk about Joseph and some of his brothers, but this family has had some real hard times with regards to their focus on God. This family kind of starts off with some issues because Joseph's family would be found in our same family, in the family of Adam and Eve. And some of you might know that story. You realize that Adam and Eve had some issues for sure because together they ended up disobeying God and turning the family towards sin. And so they had two sons, and there was some problems with their sons. As a matter of fact, this is the first murder that we find recorded in the text. One son murdered another son. You might have heard that before. Well, then what happens is the family grows, and they have children, and then we end up with three sons that are prominent from Noah, because, you know, we kind of get part of the story, and then Noah comes along. We hear a little bit about Noah. And Noah has three sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And then the Bible begins to focus on the line of Shem, of his particular family. And then we find Abraham. I hope you're with me still. I'm giving you the quick, this is the Cliff Notes version. And so then we have Abraham. And so Abraham, he ends up having two sons initially, and one is Ishmael, the other is Isaac, and there's some problems there and the family is divided because he had baby mama drama and all this kind of stuff. Way back then, there was problems. His wife thought that she could deal with him having a child with another woman, and in the end, she couldn't. And when she got her own child, there was problems in the family. And so they end up keeping Isaac, and Ishmael ends up basically, from what we understand, in a single-parent home. And we're still dealing with those single-parent children today. And I'm not saying that there's something negative per se about that. I'm just simply saying that Ishmael's children are the people that we are currently fighting in the Middle East. And so there still have been issues, and throughout the Bible there are issues like that. And so then you find that Isaac, Abraham's son, he has now 2 sons, and his 2 sons are twins, the 2 sons that are notable in the text, and that would be Jacob and, say?
Esau.
Oh, yeah, no, somebody said something. I thought I was being asked a question. Jacob and Esau, you have 2 sons there, and they were even fighting and quarreling inside of their mother. And so this family has been kind of messed up for a while. They have contention between them. And so what happens is the boys get older, and as they get older, there are even some problems there. Part of it was started by their mother, who instructed one son to trick the other brother. So the brothers ended up at odds with each other. But at any rate, Joseph, the character or the personality that we're looking at in chapter 45 today, Joseph is going to be now the second youngest son of Jacob, one of the twins. Now Jacob is the one that tricked his brother, he tricked his father, and he tricked ultimately his uncle who had tricked him. So the family had its issues, let's put it that way. And some of us can relate to that because our families have issues too. And so now we're looking at Jacob, and let's think about Jacob. Jacob has many sons, but prominently the sons that he cares about the most are the sons of the woman that he cares about the most, because he has children by different women also. But it was this woman Leah that he loved so much. No, Leah, not Leah, Rachel. He loved Rachel. Leah was the one that he didn't like so well. And Rachel is the one that he loves so much. And at first, Rachel was not able to have children. She was barren. And this is also a problem in the family. That's the reason that Abraham, the great-grandmother, had decided that she thought her husband could have a baby with somebody else because she thought she would never have children, and she did. And so all the way through this line, they had problems having children. The love of his life couldn't have children at first. But the woman he didn't so much care about, she had plenty of kids. She kept having children, you know. But the one that he cared about, she was late having children. But when she did, the last 2 children, he was really crazy about Joseph. Joseph had a younger brother named Benjamin. Joseph would have these dreams, and he would share them with his siblings. And you can read this, chapters 40 through 45. He would have these dreams, he would share them with his siblings, and his dreams basically were that someday he would, in a sense, almost be greater than them. And sometimes the Lord shares some things with us that we can't share with everybody. See, sometimes when you tell everybody your business, I know that Facebook and Twitter and all of that is very attractive. And I'm looking at a situation right now with this whole Apple thing. You know, there's people on both sides of the aisle. My thing is, they promise me privacy, and I want what you promised me. And the fact is, if you don't get if I don't get what I'm promised, I get bothered by that. And I'm ready to, Sister Green and I had a conversation about this a few weeks ago. I'm ready to cut all of it off. I'm ready to cut it off because I don't want you to lie to me. I need you to tell me either it's this or it's that. And if you're going to use my business and just put it everywhere, I'm ready to go off the grid, as they call it. And I'm just a little ways away from going off the grid. I'm waiting to hear what they say, and I just might get rid of the cell phone. I don't necessarily need it like that. It has changed our lives for the worse. We tell everything. And sometimes we tell too much. Somebody ought to ask 50 Cent this morning what he feels about telling too much. If you didn't see it in the media this morning, the IRS has called him in because I take it that he filed bankruptcy, and he took a picture with a bunch of money. $50-some thousand, they said they counted in the picture. And they want to know, why did he take a picture and post it on the internet? Now, number one, that's man's business what kind of picture he takes. And he could have borrowed that money from anybody. You know, simple as that. And the fact is, I don't really like you going through my baby book. And I think that we've gotten too exposed. And Joseph exposed himself to his brothers. And because he exposed himself to his brothers, they became jealous. And because of their jealousy, they decided to then do something that was very wrong. Initially, they were going to kill him. They wanted to kill him. But in the end, they didn't kill him. They left him for dead. And then, rather than leaving him for dead, he ended up being sold, and basically sold into slavery. And so this, of course, causes a greater divide in this family. This family has a problem. But I would also contend that we have a problem. Yes. We have a problem in our nuclear families. Many of us have siblings that we're not speaking to. We have parents that we're not speaking to. And sometimes parents aren't getting along, husbands, wives. Relationships are in trouble. Yeah. And I would contend that the family has some problems. Now, I read the other day, and it was on the internet, somebody posted that white people can't stay married and black people can't get married. So I read that, and you know, you can take it however you want, but I think that it is in large part true. But rather than to focus on the race, focus on the problem. The problem is that the family is in trouble no matter how you decide to look at it or how to attack it. Whether it is divorce or the lack of, either one of those situations is a problem for the family. The family is in trouble. I would also say that the global family is in trouble. When we talk about terrorism, we are still talking about Abraham's children. You know, I know that we get upset because we don't want to be associated with everybody else, but the Jew, the Christian, and the Muslim have the same God and Creator, whether you like that or not. So the fact is, we are still family. We're still part of Abraham's family, even though we're divided and even though we have a difference of opinion. God still created us all. God still birthed us from the same family. And the fact is, we have a problem. Now, there's some Christians that will be very upset. Well, I don't want to be associated with them because they don't believe in Jesus. Well, how do you expect that you will ever win them toward Christ if you're not even kind enough to say hello? If your biggest prayer is that we bomb them all, just so you won't have to do evangelism, I don't think that's the way that God wants us to do evangelism. If you don't believe in Christ, you know what? I'll bomb you. I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be done. So the family does, in fact, have a problem. We've done stuff to each other. Let's admit it. We've done stuff to each other. In terms of race, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of nationality, there have been countries that fight countries, races that fight races, families that fight families. There are problems. Don't you know that them Hatfields and McCoys, they came from the same region? Fact is, they were probably more blood than they could ever imagine. And so as we think about this whole idea, the question becomes, how do we restore family? Glad you asked. So that brings us to chapter 45. chapter 45, verse 1. Now this is after Joseph has been sold. And after he was sold, let me just give you three kind of things about Joseph after he was sold. After Joseph was sold, he started off in the pit, because they had dropped him in a pit and he was just going to die in there. He left the pit, he went to prison. He left the prison and went to the palace. The Lord blessed him from the pit to the prison to the palace. So he had found himself in some situations, but the Lord brought him to a place where now he's in the palace and he's in control of the food, because the Lord had given him the wisdom to understand that there were some things that were going to change in the environment. Let me stick a note there and just say sometimes you can stay in the same place too long and you don't realize that your resources are being depleted and it's time for you to move somewhere else. And so Joseph now is in the palace. His family is back in a place that is now experiencing famine. They didn't have enough food, and they were in a bad place because they did not move and change with the time and understand that their resources were being depleted. And so now we find Joseph in the palace, and he is in charge of some things. His brothers are sent by his father, go to Egypt and try to get us some food and come back. So they go to Egypt, and I don't mean to belittle this at all. I know this is biblical theology and all of that, but I just want you to get a picture. This is equivalent to the fact that they don't have a soup kitchen or a food pantry or a produce market in my neighborhood, and we don't have anything. And so my father says, go to the next neighborhood, go to the next town, take a journey, and stand in that line and see if you can bring us something back. While they are trying to get assistance, their brother, who they had put in the pit, who they vicariously caused to end up in prison, but is now in the palaces and in charge, he notices them. So now he's in charge, and he sees his brothers coming for assistance from the system that he manages. And so this has to be one of those moments, you know, they've done something to me, Sister Magwood. And now I know. Have you ever heard, because I won't even try to make you remember when you said it, I'll just say, have you ever heard anybody say, if I ever see him again? If I ever see them again. You know, that's if they ever see them again. And so here he sees them again. And so what do you do when you see them again? What do you do when you show up at the family reunion and you know they owe you money? They know you owe. They know they owe. They've been avoiding your calls. You've texted and you've left messages and you've emailed, and then you did what every family does. You call somebody else and send a message to somebody else, and now you see them. And so he sees them and he recognizes them. What do you do to restore family? Look at verses 1 and 2. It says, then Joseph could not refrain himself. So he saw them, and then after a while he just couldn't hold himself watching them anymore. So he couldn't refrain himself before all them that stood by him, and he cried. And so the first thing I would tell you is don't be afraid of tears. Don't be afraid of tears. You know, part of our problem is trying to hold in an emotion that you need to go ahead and have. See, sometimes we are too macho, we too hard to really allow ourselves to break down, to allow ourselves to sometimes feel the tear. So sometimes you got to just go ahead and let the tears fall. I think that there was a songwriter who said, let it burn. That there are times where rather than to fight back and hold back the tears, you need to just go ahead and do like my brother is doing this morning, and just go ahead and do like Uzziah and let the tears come out. So sometimes you got to cry. Sometimes you got to let it go. When we bottle stuff up on the inside and we hold on to it too long, it tightens our arteries and capillaries, and before you know it, we're sitting at the cardiologist trying to figure out what is wrong. You got to release it. One of the things my wife says is, she always says, well, if you get sick, we know what you will do is go to bed. And you know, sometimes when you've got some issues, you need to go ahead and realize that your body is breaking down, and you need to allow it to go through the motions that your body was made to go through. See, this whole idea of, well, we're not supposed to cry, you shouldn't cry, well, you know, that's not how the Lord made us. As a matter of fact, the Bible even tells us that Jesus wept. This whole idea of, I don't feel it, I don't care, it doesn't make any difference. You know good and well you care. You know good and well you want to cry. You know good and well they done hurt you and you need to let some tears go. You wouldn't be so mean to everybody else around you if you would finally just let go of the tears that you need to cry. Don't be afraid to cry to restore the family. But then look here what it says. It says that, so he stood before him and cried. Then he caused every man to go out from him. You know, this is not even a point, but let me give the life group just one extra little point so that you know you've been to church. And what I would say to you is this. Notice that he sent everybody out from him. Once again, we see in the text that you can't do everything in front of everybody. See, family business is family business. And sometimes we tell too much family business. See, all of your family stuff is not supposed to be out in the street.
Yeah, right.
See, I had a friend I went to high school with, and some years ago, she and her husband, they're going through a messy divorce. And she would even post things like, his car is in the driveway and he won't let me out. That's nobody's business but y'all. See? You don't put all of your business out there when you're having some beef or whatever with your sister or your man or whatnot. Because we know your dumb self gonna take him back in about 2 weeks. Why post all that stuff out there for people to look at you and talk about how silly you are? You gotta sometimes send some people away when you're dealing with your family issues. Those are private matters. I know that we're walking around with our bikinis on, our butt out, belly out, and everything else, and nothing is private. But there used to be a time when those were called your privates. What I'm getting at is, America, we need to get some more private places. And to realize that everything is not supposed to be seen and understood and felt by everybody. Some things are private. It's between you and your family. It's between you and your husband. Between you and your kids. Stop putting all your stuff out. Sometimes send them away.
Yes.
And so that's that extra point. I give you that. And so he sent them out, and there stood no man with him at all, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. You need to become transparent. They didn't know him at this point. And he had the ability to continue to conceal himself. But in order to restore the family, in order to have family, sometimes we've got to be transparent to save our family. You know, the way to break a curse is to tell the truth.
Yes.
See, sometimes our families are cursed because our kids don't know why they got that mess inside them, because we're busy trying to act like we never done nothing. And so we got a kid who's running around confused because we're not willing to say what we feel. No, maybe you don't understand. Well, what I'm saying to you is your child is trying to figure out why they can't stop drinking, and it's all because you're too busy not telling somebody that you're a closet alcoholic.
Right.
See, you need to tell them that there are some problems. You see them going down the same road that you went down, but because you want to conceal it, Grandma, and act like the family has never had any problems and I don't know where this is coming from. Let me tell you that mess came from us. And in order to correct some things, we need to be honest enough to say, I went through this, and now you could circumvent your problem. You don't have to go through this if you decide to do something different. You got to be willing to say to your kids, I don't know how to manage money. I messed up all my money. When I was your age, I probably could have bought a house, probably could have did some great things, but I messed my money up. I messed up my money, and now I'm watching you do the same thing. You got to be honest enough to say that. Don't act like you've got it all going and all figured out all the time. Say, I've gone through some things, and baby, I don't want you to go through what I've gone through. Talk about the whole fact. You know, I know that single parents, you held it down, kept it down, and been strong. But you know that you had more struggles than if you'd have had somebody who was sane, not just anybody. But if you had a sane person that helped you to raise that child, you realize that things would have been a lot easier. And so you got to start talking to your kids. If we, in fact, want white folks to stay married and black folks to get married, then we need to start telling our children the value of being married.
All right. That's good.
We need to start telling our kids the issues that we have with finances. We need to set them down and let them see some bills. Instead of trying to act like everything is going on, I say cut the light off because look at my electric bill. See, some of the problem is we trying to have a